as well as the compressor stations and dish. And then you have separators, drying units, all of these. So you have a mini compressor station near your well or on the site of your well. Next, please. So when you permit a facility like this, it's a permit by rule. That means you send in a sheet of paper, and in a few days you get another sheet of paper back with your permit number on it. And that gives you the right to operate that compressor station or compressor at your production site. So here you can have 25 tons a year of all the volatile organics. Volatile organics are known and suspected to cause cancer. 25 tons a year under this permit by rule. 25 tons a year of sulfur dioxide, smelly, rotten egg sulfur compounds. 250 tons of nitrogen oxide, and 250 tons of carbon monoxide. So the nitrogen oxide that you see listed combines with the volatile organics in the presence of heat and sunlight. So here in Fort Worth, in Dish, in Dallas, in Louisiana, we have lots of heat and lots of sunlight. And those combine to form ozone. Ozone levels go up. You start having respiratory problems. The elderly and people with pulmonary problems usually wind up at the hospital. And this can go on every single day when it's hot and it's sunny. Usually the levels build up in the afternoon, sort of cook all morning and build up in the afternoon. And after the sun goes down, they sort of go down. But if you have one of these locations near you, you could be suffering the health impacts of the formation of ozone in addition to the health impacts of the volatiles, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now this is a permit by rule. So there's one of the Crosstechs at Justin compressor station. It has a compressor engine, it has a condensate tank, and it has, of course, a truck loading facility to come and get the condensate and haul it off. The permit by rule application has a limit of 23.34 tons. Remember, that's under the 25 tons of VOCs, just under. But the emissions from just the condensate tank are 22 tons a year. And they could put a vapor recovery unit and reduce it down to probably about 1 ton a year. But there's no incentive, so that tank is emitting 22 tons a year of volatile organics into the area where the residential areas are right around the compressor station. Other compressor stations, when you look at the condensate tanks, are 4 to 9.6, and that's without the vapor recovery system. So this can be in your community, at your quote well as at the compressor stations. Next, please. So Calvin spent 20% of the budget of the community of Dish to have 7 locations sampled for volatile organics, and Wolf Eagle did the sampling and sent it off to a laboratory to be analyzed. They were analyzed for the volatile organics, hazardous organics, nitrogen oxide, and methane. Next. So this is what they found. They found 15 of those volatile organic chemicals in air samples in excess of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality's short and long-term effects. 15 chemicals in excess of the short and long-term impacts. In the city of Dish, not on the compressor station location, but in the residential areas. 5 of the 7 ambient air stations sampled exceeded the short and or the long-term. Only 2 of the stations sampled did not exceed. And then at the bottom, you see how many chemicals at each station. At one station on Chisholm, 10 of the chemicals exceeded the standard. Another location, 8, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1, 1. Cumulative impacts mean you don't just look at one chemical and say it exceeds the standard, but you need to look at the effect of all of the chemicals. And they're usually not additive. They're usually multiplicative. So here we have in dish, at a location, 10 chemicals exceed, and yet nobody's looking at the cumulative effects. And remember, the facilities in dish are also present in conjunction with well sites. So don't just say that's Calvin and his community's problem. Next slide, please. So this is looking at the chemicals and how much they exceed. So we had 15, if you remember, that were over the limit. And so we look at carbon disulfide. Again, a rotten 80 smell. It exceeded by 10 times the short term and by 103 times the long term. Calvin talked about the new monitoring station in dish. It gives you data on an hourly average, and it's real-time data. It's a couple hours behind. And guess what chemical is not being analyzed in that monitor? The one that had the highest exceedances when you compared it to TCEQ's long-term and short-term effects. So if you were a scientist and you were trying to figure out what kind of monitor to put, first thing you do is put a monitor that could read the chemical that was present in the highest exceedance. None. The next one is benzene, known human cancer-causing agent. It exceeds it by over 1 time the short and by 55 times the long. It is looked at in the ambient monitoring station that is in dish. They're looking at the volatile organics. The next one is methylpyridine, 5 times and 53 times. It is not being monitored by this monitoring station in dish. And you just go down the line. Ethyl methyl ethyl disulfide, a sulfide compound, it's not being looked at in the monitor in dish. So when Calvin says the boys have nosebleeds and he can look on the monitor and see ethane levels, that ethane level is accompanied by a lot of other chemicals, but they're not monitoring for them. So it either means they're not there or they're not looking because they don't want to find them. So the issue is you, Calvin, and everyone else in the room have to push to be sure that you're looking for the right chemicals, because it's easy to say, we monitored, and then all of a sudden you figure out, of course, they look for the wrong chemicals, that's why everything is fine. Next, please. And these chemicals that were listed there are known human cancer-causing agents and neurotoxins, and you're going to hear a little more about neurotoxic effects by the next speaker. So what are the acute impacts? We did health surveys and compared it to the chemicals. So you have health impacts. These are the chemicals that cause these health impacts. And these are the chemicals that have been detected in the air of dish and will probably be present in the air by well sites, by compressor sites, by pipeline corridors. And here you see acute. Acute means short term. It means like you wake up at night. Irritating skin, eyes, nose, and throat. Headaches. Dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, vomiting, skin rashes, and it just goes on and on and on. And when those chemicals peak in dish, some of these could be experienced by the people. And usually it peaks at night, so you could be in bed and all of a sudden something wakes you up and you've got one of these symptoms. Do you know to run to your computer and see whether there was a peak on the monitor? Do you know that probably the chemicals that were causing it are not being monitored by the monitor? So we still have a lot of work to do, even though Calvin